Some interesting signals maybe presenting themselves in the data. Is change upon us? And how will that impact pricing as we head into 2024? We have that covered and more in this week's report. As always, thanks for taking a few minutes to join us for our weekly market report, where we share our real-time insights into our local housing market. So let's dive in. First up, we're going to share a national headline and chart that came out this week. And this is a quick look at the Case-Shiller Price Index nationally. Most analysts had this month-over-month decline. We started to see this summer accelerating into Q3 and Q4. But as you can see here, pricing actually remains very resilient. And if we visualize this a different way, this is looking at national data versus our market data in a year-over-year comparison. And you can see that typical Chicagoland trend, with Chicago being the blue line there, where we don't get the major whips that the rest of the country gets. So this graph is only through August, but we can speak to the fact that we are seeing both monthly and year-over-year increases in our local markets. So keep all this in mind as we start to take a look at some of the other data. For now, pricing is hanging in there with no signs of any major corrections and likely more slight year-over-year price gains, unless something drastically changes as we head into the spring. So here's the new listings for the 4 counties we track. As you can see, we're staying right in line with the volume of listings we were seeing same week a year ago. We go over and look at contract activity, tracking just a tad bit off of last year. Here's our showing report. And we, as I say every week, we love this graph because it's one of our best and maybe the strongest leading indicator that we have on where the market's going. You can see here we got an interesting little blip in the data from the rolling 7-day average. It's the first time it dipped below 2022 levels since earlier this spring. So maybe just a blip, or is this telling us that buyers are taking a little bit of a step back? It is such a real-time data signal that we should know if it's a blip or a trend here in the next few weeks. Here's off-market activity. So these are sellers that took their home off the market because they couldn't find a buyer. So they either canceled or withdrew or expired from the market. 4 weeks of steadily rising off-market activity. And now the calendar turned this week. So if this number stays elevated relative to the past few months, we may be seeing another signal. So contract activity is pretty typical for this time of year. So serious buyers are still transacting. But is this dip in traffic and the rise in sellers not being able to sell a sign that maybe the frothy end of the market is coming off? Here's a balance metric. So 60% represents pretty balanced market on this graph. And we had a slight dip again this week with listing activity outpacing contract activity by just a bit. And when we add in off-market activity, we see a very similar pattern. So let's recap our findings for this week. Traffic and contract activity is slowing, inventory normalizing a bit, and so maybe the froth is off. Pricing doesn't show any signs of major corrections either way at this point, but this is why we track the data in real time so that we can give you those insights before they become available to the public. So thanks as always for joining us this week, and we'll see you again here next week.